What is up, Steeler fans? Welcome back to another episode of The Hangover. I'm your host, Steeler Network host Daniel. Alongside with me, as always, Shannon White. Shannon, how was your Easter? I hope you had a good one.
We had a blessed Easter, and I hope you did too, and all the community. And it's a special day for me and my family. Uh, and I'll tell you, you can tell you're getting older, Daniel, when you wander into the wrong stream. I clicked on the stream. It's why we're a couple minutes late getting started because I was there and I'm sitting there. I'm like, I wonder where everybody is. Where's Daniel? I got on the wrong stream. I got on the stream for Wednesday's show, and that's part of getting older. You get lost sometimes.
You're just excited for Thursday. I mean, I'm excited for Thursday. The draft it's coming up. It's the Christmas for the NFL, so to speak. Are you any plans for draft? Are you going to do anything special? Go anywhere?
Not planning on it right now. Friday maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have to see what the fam's doing, the SCN family, if we're going to have some draft shows or anything like that, or might do something there. I'll be honest with everybody. This draft class is underwhelming for me. There's a lot of years, about most years actually, there's like 10 guys that are, to me, are, no brainers. And I call them generational guys, meaning that, every guy, if he goes to the right system, they need that to be successful. Your generational guys changes the system to fit them. I mean, they're so good that they'll make a team change their system and or they can adapt to any system. This year, every guy, even your top prospects, have warts. They have concerns that make them not a sure thing for sure, Yeah. And so I think there'll be a lot of good players. I just don't know if there's any for sure superstars this year.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, this is a draft that all indications are the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking to move back.
Mm-hmm.
That's been what's been reported here recently. And I think that you can move back, or you want to make those moves for one or two reasons. One, you have your eye on somebody and they're going to be there a little bit later because maybe the position that they play. Or two, you're really trying to load up the draft picks because you're aware of how many holes you have on your team. And I think that when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers, probably a little bit of both, but more so the first one, as far as I think they can, they have their eye on some prospects that I think that if they were to move back, they could really help this team out, present and in the future. What are your thoughts on the possibility of the Pittsburgh Steelers moving back, or the reports thereof?
Well, every year I'd like to see that happen. Most years, and there's also you're less likely to reach if you're moving back. That means you've got a few guys that you're interested in taking in a certain position in the first round or early second round. If you trade up, you're more apt to reach for a guy that, if they don't pan out, it's going to cost you additional draft capital. So I think it makes sense this year. Again, without all the top superstar level talent at the top that's usually there. I know that, you mentioned the two main reasons that teams do that, trade back. A third reason would be, like I just said, that where there's not too many guys teams want to trade up for. Because if teams trade up for, let's say, the top three quarterbacks, and I'll let everybody decide what order they want to put them in this year, I don't think there's a sure thing among them. And if you're trading up this year to get a quarterback, early, I think you're running a big risk of being a dud. At least when the Steelers picked Pickens, they didn't move up to get him. They didn't have to.
Right.
Because that's even worse. If you give up current or future draft capital and you miss, it's even worse. So, I think that the rumors of them wanting to trade back, I feel like it's more legit this year than it has been in a long time.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, the Steelers aren't the same anymore under Kevin Colbert now that they are under Omar Kahn. Drafting two tackles in the first round back to back, and then now potentially even moving back in the first round, something that hasn't happened with the Pittsburgh Steelers since I believe 2003 with Casey Hampton. I think was the last time that happened. Maybe it was a little bit earlier than that. Was the last time that the Steelers moved back in the first round. So it's definitely going to be interesting. Now, with that being said, let's put our GM hats on. You know, there's three things that the Steelers can do. They can either move up, they can stay where they're at, or they can move back. Now, let's go with the most probably unlikely. If the Steelers were to move up, who or what position do you think they would move up for? And how far do you think they're willing to go up to do so?
Man, from 21, if I was the GM, um, if I was moving up here, let's say that Omenwari from the safety from South Carolina, I think he's a generational athlete, and not only his athletic profile is freakish, but his instincts, as I've said before, are incredible. If say he fell to 17 or 18, and the Steelers knew that a competitor, let's say the Ravens wanted him, and that they were going to try to move up, that would be the only way for two things. One, to get a talent like that on the team, and to two, keep him away from a division rival.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good choice. I wouldn't be opposed for the Steelers to move up a couple of rounds, or I mean, a couple of picks up to get Imawari. For me, though, I think that the Steelers, and it's very unlikely. I think it's an unlikely move, but I would like to see if Ashton Genty falls to 10 or 11. I would love the Steelers to go up there and pick him up at 11 or 12. You know, see if they can get up there and get him. That position right there, I think it fills a position of need. I love Jalen Warren, but at the same time, I don't think he's a bell cow guy. I think that when it comes to Genty, he can be the next Maurice Jones-Drew / Saquon Barkley type. You know, small, shorter guy, a lot of burst, a lot of his center of gravity is shorter, so he's harder to tackle. Those type of things, and I think he's very durable. So, I mean, I would be all in if the Pittsburgh Steelers wanted to move up for an Ashton Genty.
Let me ask you a question. To me, he's the best running back.
Yeah.
In this class, I don't think nobody's disputing that. To trade up, it would take a little bit of capital to go from 21 to, say, you said 12 or somewhere like that. To do that for a running back, now they need to be special. Like, when Barkley was coming out, you pretty knew he was a special running back, special talent. So you feel like that Genty's on that level as far as that he could be that special difference maker. Because Gibbs went in the first round, and Gibbs has that special burst and that big playability, but they didn't have to trade up to get him. So that's what I'm saying. As far as the trading up part, you think that he has a potential to be a generational guy?
I think he has the potential of being the generational guy. I think that he's definitely could be up there with the Saquon Barkleys of the world, with the Bijan Robinsons when they were coming in, those type of players. I think that if you had the opportunity to add him to your team, given the position of need and the fact that, I mean, defensively, there's some holes there. You got, defensive line, but this is a heavy defensive lineman class as well, somewhat. And I think that, yes, you're going to have to give up something, but you positioned yourself pretty good for next year's draft as well, as far as the comp pick. So, I know you can't trade those, but you might want to consider, like, hey, Dan Moore, Justin Fields, or Russell Wilson. One of those guys is going to play a significant part of this year. I mean, at least one of them. So you're probably looking at getting maybe a fourth round next year, a third round. Now, I don't know if that's going to be enough to move you up this year. You might have to give up something in the second half, but giving up future stuff too, I'm not too far against. But I do think that if the Steelers were to go up there and get him, I mean, that's a game changer for your offense. You're keeping, let's just say you keep George Pickens. I don't think they're going to trade him, but you keep George Pickens. You got DK Metcalf, Pat Freiermuth, and then now a running back that has that threat ability to hit a home run or do some damage with it. I mean, it's definitely a pick your poison type of offense if they can get the quarterback situation correct.
Yes. And that's something that we all kind of agree that, you know, it might be, with the way things look right now, it may be a 2026 problem, you know, that they're going to have to address next year
Mhm.
in the draft or free agency or whatever, and they're going to make do this year. So
Mhm.
that kind of lends itself to what you're saying about a running back early to, you know, give them that legitimate threat to help the quarterback, whoever it is. I just know that you watch these teams that move up that far in the first round, uh, that they're giving up a first or second round pick too
Yeah.
in the following season. So that could be a steep price. So they have to be for sure that one, the Gentry is that level of talent, which I think he could be, but that they have the offensive line to help him be successful. You know, which they've yet to prove that. So yeah, again, a lot of it's going to depend on what the front office sees and what they're willing to give up because they have so many holes on offense.
Yeah. I've turned down my mic. Hopefully that stops the cutting in and out. Let me know if I'm still struggling with that. I see in the chat some folks are telling me that my audio might be in and out. Um, yeah, no, I agree. You know, he's definitely got to be somebody that the Steelers know for sure is going to be a generational talent. He's got to be a guy that the Steelers are going to want to give a fifth-year option to. They can't fall under the same mistake with like they did with Najee. You know, with Najee, at least they didn't have to trade up to get him, and so
Mhm.
you know was less of a risk, so to speak. But you know, you got to hit on some of these first rounders
Oh,
if you
it's
really
been so long.
exactly
And then you
exactly
got Harris that one, I do not think he was worth where they picked him. He
no
wasn't a generational talent, and they did not have an offensive line to help him be successful. So to me, that was just a mistake all the way around.
yeah. All righty, so if the Steelers decide not to trade up, not to trade back, they stay put. Usually that means probably somebody that they don't expect to be past them, or maybe somebody they expected to go already fell to them. Who do you think that player is that the Steelers are willing to stay put for?
There's probably a few guys. Um, I was really high on Kenneth Grant from Michigan,
Hmm.
the defensive tackle,
Hmm.
but then you know they haven't showed the level of interest. No invite, no, they didn't go to his pro day, which we know that was Aaron Rodgers' visit day. But um, you know, and then with it being such a deep defensive tackle draft class, I can see them waiting. So at first I thought it was first round defensive tackle or bust, but now
Hmm.
I'm not sure. And this is the first year I can remember that there's only a few wide receivers, three or four maybe, that I think warrants a first round pick. A lot of second and third round, but not first
Hmm.
round. So it's a kind of a weak receiver class as
Hmm.
far as any first round grade, you know. Um, Running back, you basically Gentry, or you could trade back and late in the first round, justify, you know, your Hampton, Henderson, you know, one of them guys. But then again, it's a deep class of running backs in the second and third round. So
Hmm.
um, the rumor is the Steelers want late first or more second and third round guys. This is the
Hmm.
year to do it.
Yeah.
So I say Emiura, the safety again. If he fell to 21, you definitely have to, you know, consider that. But if somebody offered him late in the first, like Buffalo at 30, I heard Kansas City was a possibility.
Hmm.
Um, then I think you take it. Somebody said Cleveland wants to trade. They're thinking about trading into the first uh, for Jackson Dart
Hmm.
or maybe Sanders, you know, whichever. But if teams like that are wanting to do that, they might give you something really good.
Yeah, if the Steelers end up trading with the Browns for one, that's that's something that I don't think I'd ever thought I would say out loud. But if the Steelers did, I would be all for it, especially if they're trying to get into the first round of this year and willing to give up a first round next year. Because I don't anticipate the Browns being very good this year. I think they're going to be picking.
Yeah, really.
I think they're going to be picking again in the top 10 next year, and that'll really put the Pittsburgh Steelers in prime position for that quarterback if that's where they want to go. You know, for me, I think you're absolutely right. It's got to be somebody who's fallen. You know, I think right now the biggest rumor is Deion Sanders' kid. Uh, oh gosh, his name Shador Sanders. There we go.
Yeah.
He I think it was Schefter who or one of these mainstream media guys was saying that if Sanders falls to 21, maybe that could change the possibility of the Pittsburgh Steelers moving back, and they could end up drafting him there at that position. I think that's all a smokescreen, to be honest with you, in efforts to get somebody to move up and maybe perhaps pick him. Maybe even the Browns, or maybe even force their hand to do so. To me, I think Imawari is a guy that I think you would stay put if he were to fall and you would draft him. I think Wilt Johnson, cornerback out of Michigan, is another guy that his stock is kind of falling. He did some good things early on in his collegiate career. He's a little up and down last year, but for the most part, he was going into last season. He was going to be a top 10 pick, even throughout this entire college year. But now that the season is over, his draft is falling, or his draft stock is falling. I can see him, Army, Golden, wide receiver out of Texas. I think those are the guys that if the Steelers are going to stay put, those might be the guys that they end up going for.
Well, like you said about, is Kahn throwing these, is he being the con artist, and is he throwing these scenarios out there making people think the Steelers are interested here or there? Because like the title of tonight's show, the gambler, that would be the gambler side.
Yeah.
That he's bluffing, but he's trying to get somebody to, to fold, or, let him win the pot here, get the guy he wants. Yeah. So I can see Kahn having that in him. I think he is more crafty than Colbert. Was just so old fashioned and straightforward that he had no game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we kind of knew what was going to happen. There was just this short little list of guys he could possibly be. But with Kahn, it's totally different. But it takes the coward of the conference part. It takes that nerve to really, to put it out there and take a risk. Now, the Steelers did last year at wide receiver. And I'll be the first to admit it didn't pay off. Kahn, he kept, with the quarterbacks, he got Wilson and Fields for nothing. And, so that worked out. But he just never could get another receiver, even though he was trying all the way up to the trade deadline. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you win and sometimes you lose.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. And, I would like to see more of the gambler part, a more confident gambler in Omar Kahn, the more aggressive GM this year, even if that is going back, but aggressively moving back by acquiring some high-level picks, whether that be multiple picks in this year's draft or a high pick in next year's draft, to really set yourself up in a good position. And there's one more move, for our GM hats, and we're going to take that move when we get back after a few words from our break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody. Thank you for sticking with us. Welcome back to the Hangover. Before we get back into the conversation, I want to remind you guys of our website, stillcurrentnetwork.com, your one-stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. Make sure you go and check that website out as soon as you're done here. You can check out the up-to-the-minute breaking news, all these amazing stories that are being put out every few minutes about the Pittsburgh Steelers, including one that's I go back and look at it, so it kind of gives me an idea of who the Steelers might draft. And that is the 30-player tracker, 30 players that collegiate players that got to visit the Pittsburgh Steelers. Gives you an idea of who they may or may not draft. And you can also go check out the audio-only podcast where you'll find mine, State of the Steelers, that airs out on Saturdays around 11 a.m. So make sure you guys go and check that there. All righty, so back to the conversation. The last move we have is moving back. I think that if the Pittsburgh Steelers were to move back, it's for a defensive lineman. I think that the last time they moved back was for a defensive lineman. I think this year there's the need for a defensive lineman. It's a strong draft for defensive linemen. And I think that there's going to be somebody there that the Steelers are going to like if they can move back a few spots. What player or position do you think would be acquired if they were to move back?
Well, that late first uh, is a great landing spot for the Steelers if it is a defensive tackle, if it is a running back, even a wide receiver. You know, the only really first round tight end, I'd love to see him get a tight end, like when they got Heath Miller back in the day. But the problem is Warren out of Penn State's really it for a first round grade on a tight end for me. And he will be long gone, I think, before 21. That would be another guy if he fell. The Steelers might, definitely consider it 21 because like I said, I've always been leery of Freiermuth's concussion history, and another couple of days and he could miss the remainder of the season, if not career ending. So, but yeah, I like. I know a lot of people talk about Nolan. They talk about Harmon. People compare it to Hayward. Now, if that is an accurate comparison, and I see where it's coming from because he is above average in both pass rush and run defense. Similar build, similar talent levels, athletic profiles. That would be a guy because Hayward's not getting younger.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, what a value if they get him, let's say at 30, if that's where they ended up trading back. Running back, most of the guys after Hampton can sneak in the end of the first, in my opinion. But the rest of the guys I have second round, the highest after them two, I have second round grades on. Same thing with wide receiver. So, but as you mentioned, Johnson, so there's some talk he might slide back. A couple of corners might slide back. There's a couple of safeties that are not inventory level, but I mean top safety prospects, Starks and so there's different guys that could be there in that first round. But if you're going to the first round and you want that 5th-year option, it makes you think defensive tackle or a wide receiver because of the cost. For those positions have went up so much in recent years, like an edge guy. Whereas running back, the cost is still lower. So you would, probably more like have to go in the second or third for that.
Yeah. To me, yeah, the defensive line is where that's at. And I think that you can even move back a little bit further back than just a couple of picks to get a defensive lineman. Would you be opposed if, the Steelers were to get out of the first round, trade out of the first round, get a second round, maybe a early second round this year, maybe swap third rounds and a first round next year, like with the Cleveland Brown team who's wanting to come up for a Sanders or maybe even a Tennessee Titan team who might see somebody or one of these teams that are in the top like 5.
Yeah, I don't know if you would get a first. Even next year. I mean, it would depend if you could pull that off. Oh, definitely. But even if it's early second this year to recruit that and maybe a future second next year or something, because they're going to have comp picks next year, but not first or second round guys. So yeah, if you could pick up something like that, it's all about the future. If you're going into a season that you kind of know you're not going to have a star quarterback, franchise quarterback, you're building for the future. And this year, like let's say it is Rudolph and a veteran and a draft pick, mid-round draft pick. This year's all about developing and having that core to develop and play together so that next year or the year after, whenever, that you find your franchise guy and you plug him in, you're ready to do like the Steelers were when Ben was placed in that lineup.
Yeah.
Because you have to, somewhere along the line in a rebuild, there's the teaching season, there's the growing season. the season where you develop that chemistry. Very seldom does a team go from worst to first or from middle of the pack to the Super Bowl and win it in 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about it, even with Ben, it didn't happen the rookie year; it happened the second year.
Yeah.
Because usually it takes a little bit of time of growth, a season of growth, before you're ready to really compete. Like Washington had an incredible year with Daniels this year at quarterback, and they really look like that he's going to be the real deal, and they're going to be really competitive in that division. And they made it to the NFC Championship game.
Yep.
And so that was awesome. But I said it before the game, I didn't think they were going to be able to beat the Eagles because, again, there's that growth season, and then you're ready that next year.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you make very, very valid points on the growth of the team. And, if there's not one thing that the Steelers have been trying to do is they've been trying to avoid the rebuild. I think that's a clear indication with the quarterback position and how they've carouseled. Now, there's another way to get more picks, and that would be trading away players. I think I saw somewhere that PFF made this weird third round pick or trade for George Pickens. I think I wouldn't trade George for a third round. It'd have to be second, the very least, if not higher than that. But players could be on the board. What kind of players and for what round do you think the Steelers could trade and trade for?
The way it's set up right now, if they got a guy like Emmanuel, then I think that you could consider Minka if somebody was interested in Minka, for say a third round selection. Because the salary, he's paid as one of the top guys because of his ball hawking ability, and whether it's scheme or regression or whichever, it's not happening. And you could get similar production at a much more economical price point than what the Steelers are paying right now. And but that would be a possibility. I know people still scream and call me crazy when I say TJ, but again, paying, if it's going to be a contract dispute, unless he makes more than Myles Garrett, then that's just unnecessary drama. And paying a guy that it's had the injury issue starting to creep up and he gets older and his play style and everything else involved. Somebody says, well, we can't win without TJ Watt. Well, what have we won with TJ Watt? We've not won one playoff game. So, I mean, you're saying the heart and soul of the team. I don't know. Is he? Is he the heart and soul of the team? I mean, to me, if you're either fighting to be a contender, fighting to win a Super Bowl, or you're wasting everybody's time. And sometimes it benefits both parties, the player and the franchise, if you have to, and that's the best way to complete a rebuild. Because I'm old enough to remember when the Cowboys traded Herschel Walker, everybody thought that was crazy, and they made fun of the Cowboys for trading him, and that's what made the dynasty of the 90s for the Cowboys.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They definitely did trade one of their biggest assets to turn that into some multiple players there for them. And I think that the Steelers could get quite a bit of draft capital for TJ Watt. Mika Fitzpatrick, I think a third round would be fair, just based on his, like as you mentioned, the financials aspect of it, and the lack of production. But those two guys are probably it for me as well. I mean, TJ Watt, I'm less likely to trade him. I think that he's still got it if he can stay healthy. And I know that, that's a big if. Yeah. And, he didn't do so well at the end of last season. And the year before that, he had some injuries down the line. And the year before that, I think he was out for a significant amount of time.
And he was injured last year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, he's had some injuries down the line. I'm just hoping, and I'm hoping that a lot of it has to do with because of the lack of production on the offense and the defense having to be out there so long. And I'm hoping that, if the Steelers can figure out that quarterback position, that they can figure out that offense, time of possession at least, and make it a little bit more manageable, and not have them out there exhausted and injured, that could prolong his season and his is the level of productivity throughout the season. But
but stand to reason it would only help.
Yeah, it would only help. But with like Cam Hayward, like he ended up taking a team friendly deal.
Yes.
Yes. I hope that TJ he's not looking for 40 plus.
I don't want TJ gone, but
right.
They cannot pay him $40 million a year plus $1, so he's higher than Garrett. That doesn't make sense in the situation where the Steelers are in right now. Right, Cleveland can do it because they suck every year, and it's part of who they are. I mean, look at the contract that they give to Deshaun Watson. That's not the Steelers' DNA.
Right, exactly. You don't want to follow in the steps of the Cleveland Browns with what they're doing and their general office there.
No.
It's not. You don't want to do that. They can pay their guys. I think it was it Edelman who was talking about how the Patriots used to do things, where they would come in and he'd say, "Don't talk to me about market value, because if you want market value, go out and get it. You're not going to get it here." And they didn't pay for it, and they underpaid a lot of their players, but that allowed them to sign more players and be more competitive.
They had Tom Brady, and they were
that.
competing for the Super Bowl every year, which guys wanted to win a Super Bowl. That's why everybody followed him to Tampa and played on pennies on the dollar for what they could have made elsewhere. The Steelers don't have anything to lean on now. They have no bargaining chip. They haven't won a playoff game in forever. Yeah. And they don't have no quarterback that make us feel like they're a contender this year. So, again, I agree with everything you're saying. It's, sometimes you have to look at the whole scenario. And I keep saying we can't win without him, but we can't win with TJ either.
Yeah.
And, so I don't want to see him go out and never win a playoff game and retire because, nobody wants to see that happen to TJ, right?
Right.
It's been forever since Hayward's experienced that. And I'd like to see him win a playoff game again. So, I agree with you. But again, the Steelers don't have that bargaining chip like the Patriots have.
Now, the Steelers don't necessarily have to trade him now. They could wait until the season starts and see how the season goes and trade him before the deadline. When do you think his value would be the highest? During the season next year or around this time during draft?
Well, right now, I remember, because I like JJ too. I was a big fan of JJ Watt. And I wanted to see him, I thought he was on the trajectory to go in the Hall of Fame as one of the best defensive linemen ever. And I guess you could still say that, but he never really won anything as far as playoffs and never got to win a Super Bowl. And he went those dominant 3 years of Defensive Player of the Year. And then it was just like, oh, he's having another great year. Soft tissue injury, hamstring injury, something nagging stopped his season in its trajectory. And it happened 2 years in a row. Then it happened 3 years in a row. And then he never got back there because the body just failed him. It wasn't his effort. His conditioning was incredible. We know how hard they work out and how they stay in shape year round. They don't take this off season off and then try to get back in shape. Their boys work out all the time. But sometimes because of your playing style, it becomes harder and harder to stay healthy and stay away from the little nagging injuries that will destroy your season because you get older and you lose some flexibility and some, So, and now I'm starting to see the same thing with TJ. And I'm afraid that he's going to have a very similar career trajectory to JJ. Yeah. And right now, nobody's thinking that, but just certain people who are Steeler fans who've been watching every week. So I think his value will only go down if, let's say, he has another injury like that that short circuits his season this year. Then at the end of, next off season, teams are like, well, I'm not giving up too much because, we've seen this song and dance before with JJ.
Yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, the Steelers have another option. They can make him play his contract out, and play the final year. And then they also have the option to franchise tag him for next year. If, they wanted to do something like that, they can also approach him and say, hey, we can make you play this year and then franchise you next year, or we can give you, $5 million extra now. And, what it would be for franchise tag you next year, make it all guaranteed because it would be all guaranteed anyways. And see if he'll sign for that type of extension. I don't know. That's a little bit of I guess a dirty way of playing if you're Omar Kahn by doing it that way. But I mean, some teams have done that in the past where they forced players to play out their contract and then franchise tag them, et cetera, et cetera.
But you don't want it to be him to feel like it's a respect issue.
That's true.
Because I hope everybody understands what I'm saying. I have the utmost respect for that man as a player, what he's contributed to the Steelers. Their lack of playoff success is not his fault. And I would never even start to blame him for the lack of playoff success. However, his lack of stats in the playoffs and impact, that does fall on the player to a certain degree.
Right.
And again, he needed more talent around. There's been a lot of reasons that it's happened that way. But, sometimes it just doesn't work out that a player is going to be able to have his Super Bowl success with the Steelers. And guys like Rod Woodson have had to go elsewhere to find it. Even Antonio Brown, which I don't even think about it very often, but he did win a Super Bowl with Tampa.
That's true. He did. Him and Juju Smith-Schuster. These guys.
It's true. It's true. Yes.
They all got Super Bowl rings, except not with the black and gold. Last thing, before we call it a show, we can get into. Do you think Aaron Rodgers will be a Pittsburgh Steeler before the end of the draft?
I know you probably are on the same boat as I am. I'm so tired of the Aaron Rodgers talk. I wasn't even going to mention him, but if you mention him, because I'm just like, he said it was family issues, stuff like that, and hopefully that everything's going okay, and whatever is going on with family, that comes first, and I understand that, but it's just been discussed to death, and it's at the point now that either way, if they do sign him, you can excel, and if they don't sign him and they go another direction, you can excel, because we've all just had more than enough of Aaron Rodgers.
Do you think we'll know the answer one way or the other if he's signing, or when do you think that answer is coming through?
That's just it. I mean,
week 1.
No, I think it would be before training camp. I think it could be. I'm not willing to call a man a liar because I don't know the man at all. Yeah. A lot of people saying it's gamemanship and he's wanting to be the center of the attention, and he'll make the announcement during the draft, right before it starts, or right, so that everybody's focusing on him. I don't know about that kind of ego. I don't really. I mean, if that's true, then I wouldn't want him on the Steelers anyway.
If that happens, do you think that's why he did that?
Again, I don't want to speculate, but he might be wanting to see what direction the Steelers go in the draft. If they have a good draft to strengthen how serious they are about this year, and how does he feel about the talent level they have? Because supposedly, the Saints might be interested. He has a couple more suitors now, but yeah, I mean, it wouldn't shock me at all if it is at some time before camp.
Yeah. I think that if I read between the lines, like me personally, like I'm reading between the lines with what he was saying, it sounds like he has a trip planned with his girlfriend. Maybe he's going to ask her to marry him, something to that nature. And I think that's going to happen during OTAs in the next couple of days or weeks. And he doesn't want to miss that, because, you don't go in there and say, I'll play for $10 million if you're not serious about playing. You know what I mean? That's not somebody trying to convince you financially to play football. That's trying to convince a football team to hire you. in my opinion, if you're willing to play for that amount of money, given
But
what
do you know
Russell Wilson
that was
got.
just hyperbole that he just threw that number out there? I can't imagine him playing for $10 million for anybody.
No, I don't imagine that he would, but you don't say that unless you're not serious about playing. So I'm not saying that he's willing to play for $10 million. What I'm saying is that by him saying that he would be willing to play for 10 million is his expression of saying that he wants to play. And you know, whether the money is an aspect or not, I do think that there's a form of respect that comes with the financial aspect of also there comes the notion that you're not going to get benched for somebody else. You know what I mean? If you're paying him X amount of money and you're paying Mason slightly or a lot less, and then you have a guy on a rookie contract, then he might feel more comfortable to believe that he's not going to get Kirk Cousins and get benched halfway through the season. You know what I mean? And so, I get that aspect, but I strongly suspect he has some sort of vacation plan because he's like, I'm in a new place, I got a relationship, and this, and that. And he brought out his dog, and I was like, man, this guy's going on a trip. This guy's got a trip planned up, and he don't want to. I guess it blew up in his face last year when he went to Egypt during training camp, and I think maybe that's what this is all about.
Yeah, I mean, he's had a lot of like what he was supposed to be with the Jets. He was in a dark room or whatever, and
Yeah,
and it was always like when he arrived there at the facilities, it was like helicopters and all the cameras, and and it was on every channel, and you have to know, and he has to be aware that it's going to, when he does announce, if he announces, that's what it's going to be, and I don't think he dislikes it. Let's put it that way. There is some guys that just hate that aspect of the game. They
yeah,
want to play. They want to win. They wish that the reporters wasn't even sticking a mic in their face.
yeah.
But there's other guys that like that spotlight, and I think he's definitely one of them. And but I could care less if he produces on the field and he helps the Steelers win and all that. I just, like I said, for what it's going to cost, even if it isn't the money, just the drama and the feeling that the fans have now being disrespected. I think that, I'm against it worth it because I still don't think he makes them a Super Bowl contender.
All I know is that making the fans wait like this and be in this limbo is making a lot of folks not really like him amongst the black and gold.
Exactly.
I think there was a lot of folks who were excited for him at a certain part of this venture, including myself. And as this is drawn out, it's kind of gotten stale. It's kind of gotten annoying. And I think that if he ends up signing, he better play very well, very quick, because I think a lot of people are already fed up with him. And if he goes out there and starts playing like not very well, I think the Mason chants are going to come through the is going to ring through Acrisure Stadium once again.
Yeah.
Fairly
And
quickly.
I mean, and honestly, I think a lot of us want to see Mason have a shot, a legit shot at camp, regardless of what happens, and see what can happen with this team, after the draft and they're at full strength. And if they sign Rodgers, then he's the back up again. So
yeah,
I'm fine with it if they don't sign him. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I'm good either way. If he ends up getting signed, I think the Steelers, I'll be rooting for him. If he doesn't,
of course, yes,
I'll be rooting for Mason Rudolph. I'll bring out. I got a jersey already, a number 2 that I purchased back in 2019, just waiting to put on, that I'll be wearing during the preseason. Well, it's draft week. It's upon us in the next few days. You'll be on Pump Your Brakes on Wednesday. Is that correct?
Yes. It'd be awesome if some news broke and we could have, something to discuss, with a little more clarity about the draft. But, it'll be once the draft starts.
Yeah. And I'm not sure what the schedule is going to look like, guys. So please stay tuned. The schedule might change because of the draft as far as from Thursday on to the weekend. I'm not sure if State of the Steelers is going to be coming out this Saturday, given the fact that there is a draft Saturday. So make sure you guys stay tuned, like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification button. That way you are notified anytime any changes are made or whatnot, and we come live. Any breaking news, I'm sure that, come Thursday night, if the Steelers trade up, trade down, or stay the same, we're Steel Curtain Network's going to be live covering it. So you don't want to miss it. So with that being said, you guys have a safe week. We'll see you guys next time. Shannon, take us out, my man.